Today is Wednesday.
Don't take offense to me.
It's January 10th. My notes say it was November 8th. Okay, so we got Sean, we got Mason, we've got Lorraine, we've got Tyler, we've got Amanda. We don't have Matthew Matlerson at this time, so that's who we have in attendance. And we're kicking it off with Amanda. She gets to start us with a thought or a prayer of
Okay.
her choosing.
Let's do a prayer.
Sounds good.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to come together as a city and help better our city. Please bless that we can get through this meeting and return home safety to our families. I say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, great. Okay, so the first order of business is we get to elect a new chair and a new vice chair, and so I can see that Matt was absent on purpose, which means, you know.
There he is.
Coming in.
Very quick vote.
If you're late, you just get appointed.
Yes, yes.
We
Congratulations.
already decided whoever's the latest gets appointed chair.
I don't think that's how it works.
No,
Good tonight.
it doesn't. Okay, welcome,
Vice chair.
welcome. We already did our thought and our pledge. It's no problem, no problem. It's snowy out there.
This.
Yeah, so, is there anyone who would like to give us a nomination for chair? We'll do chair first, and then once that one's settled, we'll do a vice chair. So we'll do one at a time.
So tell us how the whole process works.
The whole process works is, someone nominates someone else, and then someone seconds that nomination, and then
We see if there's any other
see if
nominations.
there's more nominations. I mean, there could be, there's not a lot of rules here. I tried to find them. So we could have as many nominations as we want, and then we would all vote, and we hand in our votes to Lisa, and she tabulates them, and she tells us if there's a winner, and if there's not, then we do it again.
That way we have these
Until we have a
papers.
clear winner.
There should be two pieces of paper in front of you.
In
If you
front of
don't have
everyone,
one,
and so we will vote with.
I can get you some, Lori.
Do you
I
ask
can
if
use yellow, but then
anybody's
you'll know it's
willing
me.
to
I don't
serve
Let-
in
let
that
me-
capacity?
I was not willing.
Oh, okay.
If you
nominate
go
you.
back a year, and I would still nominate.
again?
It was this
So-
weird reverse psychology that just reeled us all right in.
Didn't really work.
Well, I
You
think
tell-
that if someone,
Okay. No, this is my last meeting, so you can nominate me, but you can't.
We can't buy your votes, we
No.
can't do anything,
No,
can't pray
You're
you to
out.
stay.
I'm out.
Okay.
I think
kinda-
that
I-
if somebody wants to say, I'd like to be in this position, I think that would be appropriate.
Sure.
Just so we know, right?
Anybody? Not a one?
Still point that way,
Yeah, that's tough.
to you.
Sean. Okay, well,
Yeah, you can use anything
we
you
need a
want.
nomination.
Okay, I nominate Mason.
I don't want to,
I second that.
but
I'll third it.
if
I'll
that's
fourth
what
it.
has to happen, I'll do it. I'm trying to draw down on my life. I've stepped away from 2 state bar committees.
Okay.
But
Yeah, that's me. I like that. I want to be gay president
I'll do
next
it.
year. I'm like,
if that's necessary.
good.
Okay, so we do have a nomination for Mason, and it was seconded and third. So he's
Any other nominations?
he's a potential lister there.
Mason is
Do we have any other nominations for chair? Okay, well, that's no other
Makes
nominations.
the voting.
We had a second, third, and fourth, and I think
And
a
a
fifth
fifth.
even, so.
You know,
Lee, is it gonna be too much for you? If it's
No, I'll
too
make it
much, honestly,
Yeah, I mean,
Unless you want to
once a
do
month.
it.
you see that all over my face tonight.
You would be wonderful.
Thank
She
you.
would be.
I'll work with Mason.
So
about
are you
that?
nominating?
That sounds like
We're
like
not,
vice
you're
chair.
you're stepping ahead.
Did I just hear vice
Point of
chair?
So
procedure.
you want to be the, like,
No, I don't want to be in charge. Mason would be great at that, but I would assist him happily.
So chair and vice chair?
We need nomination.
you need an official nomination, but we're doing chair
Nominate
first. So
myself, but-
if we have no other nominations for chair, then do we have anyone who's in opposition to this?
No way.
Then I suppose it's, we could
Oh,
even
wait,
just.
there's a
All in
hand.
favor?
He
It's
just
Mason.
raised his hand.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Mason.
That doesn't work. I tried last year.
Yeah.
So I would say that if we have no other nominations, then that Mason is the chair for next year. And I make that motion, and we
You
can
have
all
to hit
vote
the
on
gavel,
it.
don't you?
We can just vote on it verbally, I think. All in favor? Aye, together? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. So Mason gets to be the chair. Now we get to vote on the vice chair. Do we have any nominations for the vice chair? Amanda would like to nominate Lorraine?
Yes.
Wonderful. Do we have a second? Okay, Tyler has second that. Great. Is there anyone else who would like to make a nomination for a vice chair? Okay, great. Well, if there, is there anyone opposed to Lorraine being the vice chair? No? Okay, so we can vote on this one out loud together also. Everyone in favor of Lorraine Patterson being the vice chair, say aye. Aye. Okay, great. So Mason, would you like to take over for the rest of the meeting? Sure. Okay,
Wait,
fantastic.
did we even have a vice chair?
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah.
Dude,
And when,
no.
well, when I wasn't here a couple of times, Matt was in charge.
So,
Yep.
and
Tenure.
I think, I'd have to check the start date. I think that, so it's 3-year term. I think I'm in my last year of that. So, you know, it's good to have someone in who can be in the position longer.
Okay.
So that's
How much
great.
longer, though? I don't think I have much longer. 2 years, right?
I'd have to look it up, but I think you are close to.
Yeah, I'm a short timer as well, but it's fine.
2 years is great.
You've been in 2
Yeah.
years, you're saying?
No, he's
I've
got
been
2
in
more to
like
go.
4. I don't even know anymore.
You can do 2 3-year
How long have I been?
terms.
Yeah, I'm in my second term.
And so Mason was appointed in January 7th, 2020.
Okay, so I've
So-
got 2.5 years.
So he expires in 2026.
So January of 27 or 22? So
January of 2020, Mason started.
you got 2 more.
Yeah.
So September 24 is my.
Yeah, Matt
September of
was
this month.
September 2021. So his 3-year first term will be up in September of 2024. Yep.
And I was mayor
And
20
you are 2022.
I was 22.
4/19, 2022.
All right,
So
419.
you get till 2025. Okay, sweet. So I'm gonna hand it over to Mason. You can come sit in the hot seat. It's
we
still
hand
fun.
over?
Yeah,
You can.
What is it?
We usually have the chair finish the meeting, because the new chair isn't quite prepared,
I
but
like that. Finish the meeting.
Finish the meeting, this is
Finish
your
the
swan
meeting.
Last
song.
hurrah.
I'm out of here.
Go.
That was,
The car started.
I saw that.
So you want me to finish?
I
Yes.
do.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. All right.
then Mason can be ready next time.
Mason, you'll take over next time. If I must.
She was ready to go home.
Well, I'm just following procedure. Anyway, okay, all right, so, that's great.
Snacks?
Charging device.
So we need to talk about our schedule.
Yeah.
I think that's the next thing on the agenda. I would just say, I know I'm not gonna be here, but I would just say you might consider, we got 2 conflicts, two holidays, February 14th, me, and July 24th. Well, July 24th is a state holiday, so I would just say you need to make some sort of differentiation there. The 14th is just,
Valentine's Day?
you know, I'm not gonna be here, so it's up to you guys, what you wanna do there. But, what do you guys think?
I would agree. Well, I think, looking at them, I would say we're going to skip both of those.
You wanna skip both of them?
February and July?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's appropriate. They're holidays.
So my feeling about February is not as strong.
Oh, it skips the whole month, sorry. I was thinking that we're twice.
No, you could, you
We're
were
twice a
saying
month.
February 28th.
We are.
Yeah, you'd be back on the 28th.
Yeah, we've got 2.
I mean, I don't know what our load is looking like this year. Our load last year was a little bit lighter than it had been in the past, and we did have a lot of meetings that we canceled.
We have things coming down the pipeline, but I don't think any of them will be ready for February 14th, so I'm okay canceling that one.
Okay?
And then should we play it by ear, the 24th? No.
The
That was
24th will be
canceled because
closed.
it's the state holiday.
It's Pioneer Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
And if we don't have a new director by then, I will be gone, so,
Well,
like on vacation.
no, this is important.
Just kidding.
Okay, does anyone want to make an official motion to amend the proposed agenda?
I do. Or the meeting schedule?
No, I meant the meeting schedule.
I
yes.
propose that we do not have meeting on February 14th or on July 24th.
Second.
Okay, so the planning commission would like to amend the proposed schedule to delete the 2 meetings on the schedule that are highlighted in red, the 14th and the 24th. We have a motion and a second. Sean, let's start, we'll vote with you.
Aye.
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 Perfect, that passes. So Whitney can update that schedule and then get it posted where it needs to be. Cool. Okay, let's see. The next item on our agenda is scheduled for a public hearing. It is for the conditional use permit for vehicle rentals and sales. And it's for the S&S Auto Sales located at 595 North, 1250 West, Suite number 1. This is scheduled for an administrative decision. So we'll first hear from Whitney. She's going to explain it to us. Then we'll hear from the applicant. And we'll have the opportunity to ask the applicant any questions we might have. Following the applicant, we'll hear from the public. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this matter, the public hearing will be open. After we close that, then the planning commission will discuss and debate, and then we can go to that point. So, Whitney, let's hear it.
Okay. So this is for a used car sales dealership. This is right south of the Public Works building. So it's in the industrial high, let me turn down that microphone. It's in the industrial high zone, so it needs a conditional use permit before it can get a business license. So some of you are new, so a conditional use permit is just, it's permitted if certain conditions can be set to mitigate any impacts, if that makes sense. So if the conditions can't be mitigated, like smell, odors, things like that, could be denied. But if they can be mitigated, you're supposed to approve them. So this one is a pretty low operation. He's only planning on 3 to 4 vehicles at a time with appointments only 5 days a week, 9 to 5 p.m. We believe it is consistent with the general intent of the general plan. And if you'll remember, we've approved a couple of these in the same area last year. There were some parking issues, but we figured that out and we approved them in the same area. And it's in a existing complex, so it wouldn't impact anything like utility infrastructure or anything like that. Nothing would be added. It would just be what's there. It does require a sign by the state law for this type of business. He does have one up currently. I'm not sure he was aware, but they do need a building permit for a sign. And so when we get to that point, we'll just make that a condition of approval that he does obtain a sign permit before his business license is approved. Let's see what else. A lot of the concerns that the Planning Commission has had in the past are about how the vehicles will be delivered to the site. He has indicated on his application that it will only be, they'll be driven there. It won't be by transport truck. But even still, we've suggested adding a condition that no off-site loading or unloading be allowed in the public right-of-way, just so it doesn't impact any type of traffic or circulation patterns. The Motor Vehicle Enforcement Division does require that he have at least 3 display spaces, and he does have that inside of his shop. The big issue on this one, like the other ones that we've looked at, is parking. So this is in a business complex, and they do have a lot of parking, but the building itself only has 11 parking spaces, and the other business that is there is a drone company, and they require 12. So they're deficient by 1, and so there's no parking left for him, and he needs 6. He has called and talked to me about this before, and he's indicated that the landlord has said that there's common parking in other places and they can park behind the building, but that's not approved on any site plan. They're not striped or anything like that, so we can't count them. If he did want to talk about other parking in the complex, he would have to submit every business that's there so we can calculate how many parking spots they all need and then calculate, or minus that from how many spots are on site. So that's an option if he wants to come back and provide that information. But for now, we're recommending you either deny the permit because it doesn't meet the parking standards, or you table it and give him the opportunity to either provide that information or come back with a parking modification like other people have. So that's the report. Do you have any questions?
So just to clarify, there are 11 spaces available,
Yeah,
and they're required to have what?
6.
Well, but
He's required.
He's required to have
the
6.
other-
The other
the other
business
business
there
needs 12.
is
The other
required to
business
have
by 1.
The other business sees 12, but it's not his
7.
fault that the other business is deficient in 1.
Right.
So
Right.
technically, there's 3 locations there,
So let me pull it up and I'll show you.
and total spots are how many?
11.
So there's no way possible that,
Yeah, there's no way.
there, it's not even possible that any companies can exist in the vacant one or the one,
No.
because
Yeah.
they're already deficient with the current company.
It's
Right.
just that you're
Unless
looking
they
at it-
file for one of our parking modifications.
Right.
So there is a
So we
remedy.
must have given the other place parking modification.
No, so when they first moved into the building, they were only occupying 1 suite, so they didn't need that much parking. And then they've moved into multiple suites, and so now their parking need has increased.
You're talking about the previous
The
one,
drone.
right?
The drone
Oh, the
people,
drone
yeah.
place, okay.
So it is a common problem with these mixed-use developments because they develop, but they don't know, it's kind of this flex space. They don't know what's going to be in there and whether it needs a lot of parking. They're often underparked, and so then this happens. But it's really the landlord's decision, what kind of use they put in there as to how much parking is needed. But we do have some exceptions that they can do a parking modification and show a study and that type of thing. Or, as Whitney has suggested, maybe they could actually add parking to this site.
Like she said, behind, there's.
Yeah, if
space
they want to
behind-
come in with a site plan amendment and add parking to the site, they could do that too. They would just have to meet the parking
Can you
standards.
show us on the map
Now,
exactly
where
where
are
that
we
would be?
putting this extra
So
parking?
he is in this building right here.
Okay,
So this is the Public Works building, and then he's in this one right here. The drone company is right here, and they've occupied suites 3 and 4. Number 2, as far as I know, is vacant. But if anyone moved in there, they'd have the same problem. So 3 and 4 have taken up all of 11 parking spots right here. So he's left with none.
So what's on the other side of the building is not counted as parking?
It's not striped, it wasn't approved in the site plan, so we can't count it.
So one of the modifications possibly could be that they could stripe some stalls there.
Yeah,
Amend their site
But
plan.
that's not up to him, that's up to the landlord.
that's up to the landlord,
The
yeah.
landlord would have to come in
Yeah.
and do the
Whereas right-
parking site plan
Right
modification.
now, the landlord is at an impasse because he's like, unless I stripe them, nobody can move into those other 2 vacant places.
Right.
Correct.
Did the drone company come and get a conditional use permit or something to?
They didn't
occupy all
need
those?
one. They didn't need anything like that
Originally,
originally.
but then they expanded.
Then they expanded, and they don't have to tell the city when they expand. So we found this out when we were doing this. I called them and asked them, are you occupying more than 1 suite? And they said yes.
So they're occupying 3 and 4.
3 and 4, yeah.
But even if you stripe these, it's gonna be kind of tight back here.
They do, it does require 25 feet between drive
Drive
aisles.
aisles.
It looks like they have.
I think they've
Do they?
got it.
They might have it.
so does the building behind it, the one that has the white roof, where it
This one?
says neighborhood, are those striped? Do you know? Pardon? They are. So right across from where you
This
would want
one?
yours to be striped, they have striped.
Well, it's not, we're
So,
not, it's not quite.
Lorraine, that's considered their front of their building. So yeah, these are all striped
Oh,
right
so,
here.
because that's their front.
That's their
Got it.
front.
Frontage.
Got
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
okay.
And then these are striped. I'm not sure about these ones.
So as the staff report explains, there's really 2 options. We can't solve it tonight. So the applicant, the question is whether the planning commission wants to table it and allow the applicant to either come with a parking modification or, a site plan amendment, or if you want to just deny it, and then they would have to start over.
I
then
do
they
have
would-
a question, though. When you look at this, it kind of views as one whole site.
Yeah, and you could consider it that way. That would mean he would have to get all the businesses, count all the parking stalls, so we'd have to do
And
the
why
full
wasn't
site.
it viewed that way from the beginning?
We haven't done that in the past, so I was just going off of what we
From
did
the
in
past, we've only viewed it building by building by building.
Like we did the dog training place last year, and we did the same thing. We considered the parking spaces that were with that building as their parking.
Well, that's an interesting idea. I
But
think
yeah.
it depends on how it was
Because
first
some of-
developed and approved.
Right,
with the
because
site
some
plan.
of these things we've approved to be constructed this way, like over in the industrial area where they're doing the steel manufacturing, we viewed it as a whole site.
Right.
And there's multiple buildings there, and we counted all their parking. We didn't apply the same, we didn't follow the same methodology we're applying here today. So does ordinance tell us we get to choose which one we want to follow?
I don't think it specifies. I don't think so.
Because I would argue, without even looking at it, that if the applicant put all the buildings in here with all their clients, or all the businesses in it, there'd be somewhere on this site that you could find enough parking.
Look at
I'm
it as
not
some
sure.
whole.
It depends how it was originally approved, because if you're gonna think of it that way, then they also have to, the entire site has to meet a certain landscaping requirement, or, so was each one approved individually, or was it approved as a, an entire site? And I think it's an excellent point that could also be an option.
Is there a unity of ownership, or are these separate pads?
I think the whole site is owned by one company.
One developer.
And
One
it is
developer.
not subdivided into commercial
There,
pads?
no, he just rents them out.
Because if you do the approach that Heidi's saying, then it kind of, it
I can look that
avoids
up.
the scenario where you get the drone company coming and taking all the spots, and then, a new company comes in that's a neighboring tenant, and they don't have any parking.
Historically, that's the landlord's problem.
Yeah.
That's a business decision that we don't second guess. And we don't rescue them either when they put us in a corner.
But we've got to come up with some sort of a calculation mechanism.
Right.
So it would be,
I agree
how do
with
we get there? What assessment are
We
we
need to be
doing?
fair to applicants, but we also shouldn't be letting landlords and developers put us in the corner.
Right.
For exceeding their use.
It is one site.
It's one site, yep, I just looked it up.
So, I'm sorry, if there are more questions, go ahead. I was just going to propose the approach of tabling it and allowing the applicant to come back with a modification proposal.
Well, we can do that, but first we should hear from the applicant. We have the public hearing, and so maybe this is a good time that we hear from the applicant and see what information he or she, I'm not sure who the applicant is, would like to give us. So who's the applicant? All right, come on up. Tell us your name.
Max McKenna. And I own the dealership. And I heard some things that I could add to, because I took some pictures this morning. There is a lot of common parking that's always available on any given day, a ton of it actually. And I took some pictures this morning at 10 o'clock, which every business was open. Most of these businesses only barely have any employees there because we have a carpet cleaning place that is not really a carpet cleaning place. They actually do some rather telemarketing. I don't know what they do. The drone place, I've never seen more than maybe 5 or 6 vehicles, maybe at tops. And like Heidi was stating, or I'm sorry, Whitney was stating that I do everything by appointment, so I know when everybody comes and when everybody goes. I don't have, in 20 plus years I've been doing this, one time I've somebody came unannounced. I know when they come and when they go. I don't have people just coming and parking for any reason. So I know that there is a parking issue that's being brought up, but there isn't. I don't see it being a parking problem necessarily because I just know how I've done business in the past and I'm not about to change that suddenly just because I may or may not have the parkings. I sell cars from the shop. I keep them secure because that's my number one thing is security. So I keep them all inside and when a person shows up it's one car and they leave with one car. I don't need any more parking. When I park my own vehicle, if you look at the back of that very back building, that's where I park is behind the building. And you guys were asking what's striped, those are striped in the back. The very back of that very back building, towards Legacy, those are striped.
very back building.
So.
It says
you
deluxe
know,
carpet
so
cleaning.
that's this building right here, behind that, they are striped.
Yeah, okay.
So that is used as common or overflow parking. And then the front of those buildings, they're striped. And I've talked to the landlord, I think he's owned it for 10 years, I believe. And he said we've never, ever had anybody complain about a parking problem. So I just don't see parking being an issue whatsoever. I don't. There's just a lot, and like I said, I took pictures of the whole place in real time, not off of like a satellite, and you guys can see the whole place. It's almost empty. And this was 10 o'clock this morning. There was an empty parking lot from front to back.
Do you guys have any questions?
I don't have any questions about parking, but I do have a question.
Yeah, for the applicant?
Yeah, for the applicant.
Yeah.
So, where are you moving your business from?
Midvale.
Midvale, and how come you're coming to Centerville?
So I started my business in North Salt Lake, and I've always liked this side of the valley. Midvale got really crammed. There's a dealer on top. So where I was in a similar establishment where there was a bunch of shops. The landlord promised me there wouldn't be very many other dealers, maybe another one. When I moved out, there was 9. And that just impacts my business. I can't do it. So I had to find something else, and I came back home. And I like it here. I was in North Salt Lake for 3 years, and I had to also meet with the commission there, but that was because the building was brand new. Nobody's ever moved in there. So I don't think they knew what was going on, but they improved me, and I've never had any issues there whatsoever. And that was, talk about parking, that was a tight deal. And then I was in Midvale for 12 years and never had any issues, but you can't do business with 9 other people there. And I was promised one thing, so I moved down, and it's been good. I like Centerville, and I live in Taylorsville, so it's not a fun drive, especially right now. But I get it done, and I like it. I settled in, and even the drive's not bugging me anymore.
How long have you been up and running here in Centerville?
Well, I'm not running because I can't. So all I do is store stuff just so I'm paying a whole lot of money, and I'd love to make some money. I'm getting a little low because I can't really sell cars, but I'd love to. And like I said, I'm not a huge dealer. Like Whitney said, there was somebody that got approved. I'm sure they're there all day, and if you won't find me there. If you wanted to find me, you won't find me there. I'm not there. I'm just not that big of a dealer. I do things by appointment. I want to know what's going on, when and where. So the parking thing, I understand that there's maybe a rule to follow, but I'm not trying to break the rule, but the parking thing isn't impactful to my business. And I've asked the drone guys, and they said, look, I even asked the dog guys next door, and they said, you're more welcome to use my hour. They don't fill it up either. Nobody fills up the parkings there at all, including me.
And then you when you purchase a car to sell it, you drive it to the
Of course,
facility.
yeah.
It's not any
I'm a
of the.
one-man operation. There's nobody else. My wife does paperwork at home. That's my home office. She doesn't even go to the office, so it's me. You'll never see anybody there but me. I go there, I leave there. That's it. There's nobody there. I bring my dog there once in a while, but he doesn't count.
So you said you're not selling currently out of Centerville?
I've been almost out of business basically for 6 months because I can't.
And I'm looking on just the Google Maps. It's very similar to what we are seeing on the map up there.
Yeah.
And I see that it does say S&S Auto Sales.
Well, I have to
currently.
hang a sign for the state.
Okay.
So the state, like Whitney said, I have to have a sign before. It's pretty weird the steps I have to take because I have to deal with the state and the city, and the state has their requirements, and obviously you guys have your own. So I have to follow everybody. So the sign's only up for the state.
Do you have a permit in Centerville to do business then? I guess I'm a little.
Not with Centerville City, not yet.
Okay.
This is why I'm here.
Okay. That's
The
what I was
state
wondering.
lets me,
At
but the
least-
state, their requirements As far as like city code goes, they don't care about that, it's not their problem, because it's per city.
Yeah.
But as far as the state's concerned, I'm fine, they're not bothered by what I'm doing.
Right,
But if without that sign, there's no point in me being here.
sure.
So that sign just had to go up before anything.
Okay.
And that sign was made a long time ago, that sign moved with me.
Can you explain a little bit about the transport trucking and where would it come through and
I
where?
don't have transport truck.
Okay, so no transport truck, you would just pick up the cars, okay.
If they're not driving.
Because part of the report said that there was a transport truck that could create some traffic flow.
No, Whitney was saying that that was not wanted and they specified that's not coming.
Okay.
No, well, if I have vehicles that are broken, need attention, I told them to a shop before I bring them to my place to sell. So they don't see, broken ones don't see me. They go to a shop, then they come to me, basically clean, ready to go. But I don't display them outside, and I never have.
So all the cars would just go right into the building?
And it's usually 3, 4, as many as I could fit. That's a closed gate, security wide. See my insurance, they always ask me, do I have gates, do I have cameras, do I have that? Well, I don't. So my garage keepers is what it's called. It's for everything in my garage. And so if something got screwed up outside, I'm out. And that's just not what I do. So I keep it all inside because my insurance is only for that. I don't have a lot of insurance and I don't want it just because it's what I don't want it. So I stay low key.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm not very H-mail, I don't have the money. But like I said, I don't think, I understand what was said, but I don't see parking being a problem just because I've never created a problem with parking anywhere I've been. But I talked to the landlord, he said if we had to stripe a couple here and there, we can, but there is more stripe that's known to the building.
Would the landlord stripe just west of your building?
Oh, yeah.
Is that
right
what-
behind my garage?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Because in my lease, it says I have 6 to 7 parkings. That's my lease specified, and that's it. There's no ifs or buts about it. 3 to 4 in the front, 3 in the back, no more than 3 in the back. Right behind my gate, so I'm not bothering anybody, because it's my gate. And I could fit between the end wall and my man door, the actual swing door, 3 cars, not a problem, without bugging anybody. And then he's told me that back there is striped, and I can use it if I needed to. See, they're not striped, but that's not my car, that's actually somebody else's, but.
So it does sound like there are some options for this applicant. And again, we're just saying as staff, we don't have enough information to make that decision. So,
And Tech Connect, which
But we
is right
could
where that
certainly
orange
work
car
with the
is,
applicant.
they said I can use their parking too where that orange car is because they only have 2 employees, because they have salesmen. So they're not there, because they're outside salesmen, so they go out. So where that orange car is, they're like, you're more welcome to use some of that, because they only have 2 employees, that's 2 cars, and they have 2 units, which ends up being way more parking than they need. So and from what I've noticed, and I know it might sound like it's not, there's more parking that's actually needed in that whole entire complex.
So did your landlord promise you parking spaces, it sounds like?
6 or 7, that's all he told me.
Okay.
Which Whitney said they only need 6, you said?
You need 6.
Then he told me I have 6.
Right, but if he's overpromised to everybody, then that's a problem. It's like
That I
overbooking the
don't
flight.
know. I
Yeah.
don't like asking what's him.
And that's
what's him.
fine. But that's the dilemma we have to confront. The second question I had is, it sounds like you've verbally gotten assurances from,
I've asked.
hold on,
Yeah.
from neighbors. Are they willing to enter that into a writing, to a shared parking agreement? It's worth considering. All right.
I didn't ask that. I definitely go over that.
Does anyone have any further questions for Max? Okay, thank you. We're going to open the public hearing now and see if the public has any comments. So I'm going to open the public hearing, and if anyone would like to make a comment, now's the time. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing because we have no one here to give us the comments. So now I think it's time for us to discuss this. Personally, I don't think this is his problem to solve. I view this as a whole site, and I think it's the landlord's problem to solve. And he's responsible for making sure there's enough parking for all of the units and all the dynamic puzzle pieces. But from my perspective, it shouldn't be a burden on him to prove that this whole site has enough parking. And I don't view it as his spot in front of the building, whether there's enough parking there. This is a whole site. It's like, when you approve it as a whole site, and you don't approve a building at a building at a building at a building. When you have one entrance to this building complex, it's clear to me that this was all done at one time. You don't have multiple entrances off the main road. There's that one entrance. So, from my perspective, I think that perhaps, and I don't know the right process for it, but if there needs to be a site plan modification, or if we need to see who's parked everywhere and what buildings everywhere, that sounds like a lot of work that's not really his burden to bear. So,
In other words, are you asking, do we have some sort of, documentation from the city to say, okay, what parking lots were allocated to this particular building versus that building? And if so, then it wouldn't be his burden, it would be our burden as a city to say, there's enough space and here's why.
I need to be the landlords.
But somehow the city was approving
Yeah.
certain amount of
And do we need to do
spaces.
designated spots in front of these businesses that park here if you're going to this business? I don't know.
I mean, you could table it and direct staff to look at how this was approved and one of those options, and also give the applicant time to pursue some of the other available remedies, such as a parking modification or a site plan amendment.
And remind us, Lisa, if we table it, do we have to do a date when he comes back? I know we talked about that. But
Yeah, it depends. If you just table it to the next meeting, to a date certain, then we don't renotice it, but if it takes more time than that, we usually renotice it.
And we like to not renotice it? Is that what the?
Well, it depends on how much time you want to give the applicant and staff. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not enough time.
Isn't enough time
Yeah, what's
for your
our
staff?
next meeting
So we
after
can
that?
table it to, we don't have to table it to the next meeting necessarily. We could do it 3 meetings out or 2 meetings out.
That would
well, you just canceled 2 meetings out.
be, we did
So
cancel the 2
You're
meetings
looking at
out.
either your January meeting or your end of February meeting, if you table this.
We know he's ambitious to get up and going.
I would, I don't want to be the stumbling block for him to start making money.
Also, I forgot to say, there was an automotive establishment in this compound.
Right, that was.
So-
yeah.
There was,
Don't worry about tabling it to a
Yeah.
date certain.
there
We'll do the
was an
noticing.
auto establishment in this place before that didn't seem to impact really, I imagine, anything at that point, so I'm not the first one in this complex to try to do this. Somebody's already done it before.
So I'll take the contrary position. It is the applicant's burden to prove that they are in compliance with our ordinances. There's no question this application is not in compliance with our ordinances. Now, I say don't do a denial because the denial, as I understand it, would require a new application fee for a reapplication. That's not. That doesn't-
You don't think you could find enough parking in this site? You think it has to be parking attached to the building?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. The application as it currently sits in front of us cannot prove that it is in compliance with the ordinance, period. That's their burden to prove. Now, should we expand the scope of the application? That's also the applicant's problem. But this is also the landlord's problem. This is the same problem we had with Cut Bob. I don't know who was here with Cut Bob?
None of us.
Lisa.
Why we didn't get cut off?
No, that's a totally different thing, but we had this problem, and we've had this problem, and this is a repeat problem, where we let the first one go in, and then we are the ones who feel guilty for telling somebody who's suffering from economic problems, hey, you need to follow the rule.
So I think it calls the question, forward as to what mechanism are we, required under the code to analyze the parking lots? Because, if we're analyzing it the way that the staff report put forward is the correct way, then I agree with Mason. That's something that the applicant's got to comply with, and you know, he's going to follow the same rules as everybody else. But what I'm hearing is there's a possibility that if we went back and looked at how this was originally approved, it could be the case that there is enough parking if we apply a different analysis. And so I think it's appropriate to have the city go back and review it to make sure that we're, you know, not missing something or overlooking an important step or analysis. If that were the case, then maybe he doesn't have this problem to begin with.
Right. Let me jump on that to finish my thought. Should this be viewed as a site? Very likely. Yeah, very likely. We've done it in other sites. There are easy mechanisms, as I would see it, for just a shared parking agreement. We've done that before on many other applications. But at the beginning and end of the day, it really ought to be the landlord that is monitoring his or her own parking and not making promises in leases, giving people parking spots, creating false expectations, and then putting us in the corner for being the bad guy.
Yep.
So
Needs to make an
that-
annual check-in.
that said, we can't monitor that. We don't have the staff, we don't have the resources. And so I view this as a problem for everybody, where nobody comes out a winner. But at the same time, it's our duty to take the application as it sits in front of us. And currently, I don't feel like I could vote in favor of this application to go outside of what staff has recommended, because I think staff is correct. We can't approve this. We would have to either table it or deny it, because it isn't in compliance with the ordinance. If we look outside, just like we're recommending, yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but I do not recommend, I'm not inclined to say deny. That would mean he'd have to repay, and I don't want him to have to pay another application.
Can there be more of like a checks and balance with landlords, like having to check in with the city? Like we have such and such business renting from us? No?
No.
They should.
Or in other words, like if we've approved it for, 50 parking lots and we can see that they're only using 30, is there some sort of
I think what we're saying is we don't have enough information to solve it tonight, and so we're just recommending you table it. If you don't want to deny it, then, that gives applicants some options, and staff will certainly look into the ideas that have been brought up today. But I do believe it's the applicant's obligation to, this application does not meet our ordinances, and they have some obligation to make sure it does.
So I'll make a motion, and you guys can tell me what you think about it, but I would suggest a motion where we table this and we request that the Centerville City staff go back and view this building as its whole site and see how it was originally approved, if it was approved as a whole site, and if we could count the whole site's parking to meet his obligation, and then bring it back to us with that greater information. And I don't know if I have to give reasonings, but that's my motion.
And then just to clarify, would your motion also include if it does qualify that he would just, does he have to come back and have another?
He does have
hearing?
to come back.
I will say that this was approved in the late 80s, so I might not have anything to go off of. So if that's the case, you might want to put something in your motion of the next step, so he doesn't have to come back for him to get another.
I don't know what we
Right.
have
The landlord
to do,
strike
but I
the
think-
back and get him 3 more back there.
Or the applicant can use any of the parking modification,
Yeah, the applicant can use the
And staff
parking
can certainly
modifications.
work with them on those, we can
That
talk
would be
through
a
the
parking
ordinance.
modification.
Yeah, the landlord should be responsible. If the landlord's promised him 6, stripe the back. It's easy.
He does have to come in for a site plan to do that and get that approved. So that's another step.
The landlord.
That would be the
The
landlord.
land, so he could apply for it, the landlord would just have to sign off on it.
Okay.
And pay
So-
for it.
So in the motion, instead of us telling him the solution, perhaps we could just say, fine, come back, we're going to table it, it's not ready yet, come back, work with staff, find a solution.
Wonderful.
I second that motion.
Well, that was not articulated very well.
You want to restate it?
Well, we need to deal with the one that's on the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I could accept that modification to my motion,
Okay, okay, that.
and that would take care of that.
I second.
And Matt will second it, so great. I'm gonna leave it at that. I think we should vote on it. Sean?
Is everybody clear on what the
We're
motion
voting on the
is?
tabling with the modification, right?
It's my last.
Okay, she doesn't care. She's out, man, her car's done.
Sean says
I say aye.
Aye.
aye?
Aye.
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 Great, that passes. So, Max, worked with staff.
Okay,
I'm crossing my fingers for you.
thank you.
Find a modification that works.
Yes. Find a way to make it work.
Like I said, that picture is what it looks like during the business hour, and it's, I think there's a ton of parking. And if you guys could look into, like you said, Heidi, the whole side, you'll see that
Yeah.
if I really need it, I can use a lot more than is dedicated necessarily to me. And I don't need to, but if I need it.
Cool.
Maybe we'll talk with Whitney and see if we can
We'll talk.
come up with
Yeah, you'll get there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Drive safely.
All right, the next item is also scheduled for a public hearing. It's the Municipal Code Amendment Subdivision Ordinance Updates. This is a legislative decision, and Lisa, there's two here. They're both very similar, but we're going to talk about them separate. Okay. So let's hear it.
So we have before you some amendments to our subdivision ordinance in response to some substantial amendments to the state code regarding the subdivision process. And these ordinances amendments have to be adopted by February 1st. So I apologize for the late hour of bringing these before you because we have one more city council meeting to get these adopted. And I'll take the responsibility for that. I think these amendments were more substantial than I expected. But the city has hired the law firm of Smith Hardvickson. The state has allowed two law firms, I believe, to help cities with this, and the state pays those attorneys to help us draft these ordinance amendments. So we have Lisa Watts Baskin here from Smith Hardvickson, and she's going to go through the proposed amendments in your packet. I know they're substantial, it's 72 pages, and we're also going to suggest a few changes tonight, but I think we're just going to try and give you the framework of the state law requirements and what we're proposing and where we actually have any discretion at all. Because a lot of these are just mandated, and we have to fix our code, we have to fix our forms, and we have to get our checklists in order by February 1st.
And what if we don't?
Well,
No, really, what if we don't?
well,
Then what happens?
I think we would have to follow the state law. So, but we wouldn't have our ordinances in place. And if we don't have the checklist, so one example is if we don't have a checklist telling developers everything that they have to do, then we've waived that ability to require certain things. So we really need
Yeah,
to.
there will be no escape.
Chaos,
No,
as we know.
no chaos.
Cats and dogs sleeping together.
It's just
At
not
my
an
house,
option.
yes.
And I think, if I remember correctly, we have to do these things also to be eligible for grants, and there were,
That's moderate income housing.
oh, that's right. Okay, great, good. Well, do you want to tell us any more, or are we going to turn it over for our?
We'll turn it over to the other Lisa.
I have one question before you pop it over to the other Lisa. Sorry, Lisa. Is she going to be going through each one, each red line change?
Oh, I hope.
I think more conceptually.
Okay,
We'll go through the statute and then
right. Well, I did. And if,
I did too.
and if we have questions about some of that, do we ask then? Do we ask later? Am
Yeah, I think
asking
let her-
you? Am I asking Lisa?
we'll let Lisa give her presentation, and then just like our other applications, if you have some questions, we'll also make sure we have the public hearing. So I think that'll,
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Lisa Watts Baskin, and I am an attorney at Smith Hardvickson, want to explain a little bit how it is that I'm here. There is a consultant pool that was created by the state legislature to help cities incorporate changes in response to this Senate Bill 174. And what they did is they put it out as an RFP, and law firms could put in and see if they could work with it. And there were two firms, mine and Todd Godfrey's firm, that was awarded them. And then also there were a couple of planners and maybe an engineer too that was awarded the contract. You will not pay anything as a city. The state pays everything. The state will invoice. You don't have to do any invoicing. It comes completely through this pool. So in terms of finances and administrative, it's pretty painless. Now that's about as little pain as you can experience, because otherwise it is quite painful. And the reason why it is there are a couple things. This bill, it's Senate Bill 174, was passed in the last session. Local Land Use and Development Revisions, pretty innocuous title. Lincoln Fillmore was the Senate sponsor for the bill. It had a couple things that it was supposed to do. They wanted to enact a new process for applications for subdivisions, and only certain types of subdivisions. 1 families or 2 family dwellings and townhomes. Okay, so it was a narrow category. And they wanted to do this because they felt, the legislature felt that they had to reduce the delay times when a subdivision application comes in and how long it takes to complete the process. They also wanted to clarify that the city council doesn't really have much authority by the time it gets back to them. It's all gone through the administrative process, and yet city council people, of which I sit on mine in North Salt Lake, you have the public come in and there's clamor, and yet you listen, but there's nothing you can do because all the boxes have been checked, and administratively it's in compliance. And so people walk away feeling unheard. Council members feel unsatisfied in their leadership, and the legislature wanted to fix that. Okay? So the bill did a lot of things. I've got a list of about 9. Okay, narrowed it down. The first thing is, as I said before, it applies to the subdivisions, and only these ones. 1 family residences, 2 family residences, and townhomes. It completely eliminates the city council, their authority to approve these subdivision applications. Completely out of there. Now, city councils can enact ordinances that deal, text provisions that deal with how subdivisions are going to run, or what the zoning provisions will be, or whatever, but in terms of the application process, the city council has been jettisoned, all right? It makes that subdivision submission, review, and approval completely administrative, no legislative at all. And the planning commission is out of the final plat approval process. So depending, I mean, that's the way the state code is written, and Lisa and I conferred on this when we get into it. So the planning commission could have final approval on the preliminary plat, which is as it is drafted. Okay. It requires that you have a designated administrative land use authority, and I'm calling it the ALUA because it's all throughout the code, and I don't know why they had to use that, but most cities are then utilizing the planning commission as the ALUA, all right? And in your case, the community development director and the department's going to review and make comments to the ALUA, back to the planning commission, once the review has been done and all the work has been put into it administratively beforehand. Then it goes to the planning commission, who is now called the Administrative Land Use Authority, who will then have the authority to make final approval of the preliminary plat. Clear? Okay. Is it not clear? I'll slow down.
No, you're good. It's good. It's just a lot.
I know, it is. That's what I meant. It's quite painful. So they wanted in the legislature to cap the number of times an applicant has to come back and forth and back and forth. And they've called those review cycles. And the statute isn't entirely clear. If one were to read it one way, it means that you can have 8 total. 4 in the preliminary plat phase and 4 review cycles in the final plat phase. But the way it's been interpreted by others and even by me is I think it's 4. 2 cycles in the preliminary and 2 cycles in the final plat. And the ordinance that you have in front of you wasn't very clear on that, but we're coming to terms with how it's to be read. There was a municipal attorneys meeting, and they had a discussion on this just 2 days ago. And the bulk of the attorneys in the room were not clear. And so we're working off of a script, working on a recipe that forgets the salt or something. And so we might end up in trouble, but we still are required to make the cookies. That's the problem. Okay, so what's going to happen is this application is complete. Once it's complete, then it triggers a time clock. And the time clock will run. So on a preliminary, you have 15 days as staff, once the complete application is submitted, to review it, make comments, put in red lines, do whatever it is that you need to do to get it up to snuff. And then you work back and forth with the applicant. Once it's complete, you can work back and forth. And then you send those red lines, those comments back to them, and they have 20 days then to respond.
Consecutive days or work days?
Business
or
days.
Business days.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Every time I say days now, 15, I mean business.
Okay,
Or
okay.
20 business.
Okay.
So then they have 20 days to respond and address those red lines. And it goes back and forth. And finally, when it looks as though they've addressed those issues, then it can go to the planning commission. All right? But there can be two cycles of this. You can have your original red lines that you can deal with, and then you can have that second cycle where we're reviewing if they've addressed the red lines, and if they've reached all the comments, and so forth. And if that's complete, then we go to the planning commission, and they can approve it. Okay? The second cycle, well, let me finish here for a second. The timelines are arbitrary, but they are those that were selected by the state legislature. Okay? And so we have to incorporate those into code because it's state law. They have preempted, in a sense, local authority on this particular issue. And so in order for us to have moderate income housing grant money, in order for us to be in compliance with code, we need to make these changes. Now, what is interesting is that the deadline on this, as Lisa says, is February 1st, 2024. That's for cities that have more than 10,000 residents and cities within the first, second, and third counties, if there's less than 5,000 residents. So you're one of these that has February 1st. There are a whole slew of cities that are due December 31st, 2024. And I represent a number of cities, small cities, that will be doing this in the coming year. All right? So in a way, this is almost like a pilot program, the way I see it. But we don't have any option but to do our best, pass the code, adopt the code, and move forward. So there's other thing that they put in the state code, and that is the concept plan for these types of subdivisions could be optional. And a pre-application procedure could be optional. You don't have to have those. And that will be a decision that Lisa and I have talked about, and she'll bring up as we talk a little further. The idea is whether or not Centerville would do away with the concept plans altogether for these subdivisions, but retain the pre-application hearing. And what that pre-application meeting is before it gets really formal, you can sit down with staff, city staff, development staff, and discuss, this is my project, I don't yet have a drawing, this is what I'd like to do, and so forth. So it's a very conversational, non-controversial, non-confrontational approach, right? And that is something that is probably helpful all around, okay? But then once there's a complete application, then the preliminary and the final plat approvals begin their process in these cycles. And finally, they have a new appeal process, and it's not clearly written in code, but it appears as the process has been created, and in that process you have to have an appeals panel for certain types of things that happen. And that is if the subdivision ordinance review wasn't done correctly, 10 days, or, so they've got this, but you don't, it's not exactly clear, so we're putting it in, and that is one section that you have here. I haven't addressed the appeals because we're still working on it and trying to figure out exactly how to do it. For example, if it's a public improvement or an engineering standard, you have 10 days to have this hearing after, and they have to have that request, and you have 10 days for the hearing. Otherwise, like all administrative tribunals, you have 30 days to make the request, and then you set it as you regularly would under administrative code. So, the timelines, you have 15 days for the initial review, and then you have 20 days for response by the applicant, and then you have the process again if you need to. The development staff, review staff is doing all of this, right? Because this is what's happening. It's happening all the time, but now it's in code. Now, sitting on the city council, as I do, you wonder how this will be perceived by the public, right? Because when I say to you, well, the city council is not going to make any decisions anymore. They won't administratively. But there has been a misunderstanding out in the public that there's more power than the city council actually has. And so this is clear that up. I wish it hadn't been forced upon us. That's all I'm going to say there. So if you look at the provisions that we've got, let me step back for one moment. Lisa Romney, last week we talked about some questionnaire for optional decisions that she made. And then we talked again today, and she's come up with some new. And do you want to talk about those now, Lisa, or do you want to go through the code, the draft first? I don't care either way.
I'll let you finish, and yeah, maybe
Okay.
we can just go over that questionnaire too.
Okay. So what we're doing, we're amending Title 15, which is your subdivisions code. Other cities have sometimes created a whole new title to address just these arcane, unique types of subdivisions. And what this is a weaving. Okay, so it makes it kind of hard to follow, and it's difficult to draft as well. But it just basically amends the general provisions to say what you hope this new subdivision ordinance will do. At 1502, we have written concept plans, but that's gone out the window, and so that would say pre-application review. So the concept plan is not going to be part of this process at all, if you agree to that. Then you have the preliminary plat, the final plat, and then other provisions in Title 15 were hardly touched at all. Your general requirements for all subdivisions, requirements for PUDs, non-residential, public improvements, development techniques, and so on. So the bulk of the law hasn't changed in terms of how subdivisions are administered and how fees are paid and whatnot. So the definition, if you go to the first page in section 1501.040, that defines the administrative land use authority. And you can see that there is in the red lines. And their job is to review land use decisions on preliminary land use applications submitted for these types of subdivisions. All right? It can't be any member of the city council, including the mayor. The applicant is the owner of the land or the owner's agent. Often throughout the court, they say subdivider or developer, but we're trying to clean that up, at least in this version that we've got, and call it the applicant. So that's where that definition is. The checklist is something that cities will have to develop, and it will come from all the different departments, whether it's from planning, just everybody, the city engineer, the parks people, the public works people, all of those different agencies will put their heads together and say, this checklist is definitely what we have to have. And it could end up to be 200 items or 300 items once you put that, and if you don't have those things in the checklist, then it's waived. You as a city waive any regulation under that particular item. So let's say I forget to say that in the checklist, I forget an item X. I cannot require that now of the applicant.
In the future, yeah.
So that's a real heavy burden for cities to put that checklist together. They've been working on it, and thanks for getting on it so quickly. I do have some versions from the city engineer for both preliminary and final, but I don't know if the others yet have been able to put more together.
Can I ask a question about the checklist?
Yeah.
Does the checklist have to be approved, or can it be like a working document?
I think it has. I don't think it has to be approved like an ordinance. I think the checklist is a working document.
But it has to be posted, I think you said, on the
Has to be
city
published
website,
and
so it has to be.
So for example, you could post your first round and go through 2 rounds of this with said developer, learn a few lessons, update your checklist and repost it.
Well, arguably, they'd have vested rights the moment that they apply.
It would only apply to the next
Yes, but it would
application.
apply to your next applicant.
Right, so if we, yes, if
So-
one would get
yes.
through the gate, is what I always say,
Right.
and then you'd have to fix your checklist.
And you're gonna learn a
And
few
we will,
lessons.
we will be fixing it, I'm
Yes,
sure.
and so you don't have to, meaning
That's
that's a
true.
live document. You can change that checklist at any point, so long as it's posted.
I could change it on Monday and it'd be applying on Tuesday, yeah.
Yes, got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. All right. The department that's going to be overseeing this, of course, is the development department, but the director of the development department, the community development director, will be the one that ultimately makes the final decisions on the final plat. And that will because he receives all the comments from staff. He also has reported to the planning commission. They have reported back. It's been this collaboration. But ultimately, it can only come through one person. It's going to be the director. All right? Not your zoning administrator.
They're the
And
same person.
They are, but they wear different hats.
They do.
Yeah. This is the zoning administration. This is subdivision.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And the complete application is defined, and then minor subdivision, you call it small subdivision. Most places they're calling it minor, so that was just a technical change whether or not you want to accept it. But minor subdivisions are treated differently. They don't go through this process, okay? The review cycle is defined of what it is, the submission of the complete subdivision application, city's review, city's response, and then the applicant's reply. That is the process. That can happen twice for each. And then the statute spells out subdivision improvement plans, subdivision ordinance review, and subdivision plan review. And I think I put it in because I think it was kind of an oversight by the legislature not showing exactly where these fit in. And so it took a little bit of, you can see some places where they have fit into the process, but it's never really explained how they want this. So it's the civil engineering plans for your subdivision, ordinance review is the review by the city, and the subdivision plan review is review of the improvement plans and other aspects. And those would be handled by your staff in that process. Okay, then it has the 1501-060 is the general responsibilities. This is basically just cleanup. But again, down in section F, it's the planning commission that's authorized as the ALUA to make the reviews, investigations, reports, recommendations, and approval. So I tried to read it into what you currently taught, so you can see you got a little black and you got a little red, and that can make it kind of messy, but I think it's going to work. And then the city attorney's assignments, and then ultimately the community development director has the final authority, as you see. Compliance is required. Then we get to the bulk. One thing I've done in the last little bit is I said that if a plat is recorded but is not in compliance, it's void. And any transfer of land is voidable. So that's a new provision that I've added in there. And then the timelines for review, you've got the limited reviews. This is spelled out, as I've just summarized it to you. And this is your review cycles for the preliminary. Now, in your city code, you have penalties. And other cities have them a little bit differently. They're not much different, but I asked Lisa, do you want to keep this as a criminal provision, Class C misdemeanor? I guess you would. I mean, but you also could say what those civil enforcement tools are, and you could maybe enhance that a little bit by mandamus, abatement, other appropriate things. So you might just want to clean that up while you're at it. And then it says this section, 501-100B, this was, please ignore it, because this has got to be fixed. This is saying that I was getting the idea we've got only 15 days and 20 days and so forth, and yet we've given them 6 months if there's a change in the ordinance. And this is about getting in the door first. So I think I've changed this now so that it works better. This is though it's taking away actual due process for people who are putting applications in. If we say, okay, you don't get 6 months anymore, we've got to address that properly. Now, the appeals section has been rewritten, but basically, it incorporates what the language is. Who goes to the appeals? You have I think it's the adjustment, Board of Adjustment, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you have here. That would be your appeal. And then specific as to these 10-day timelines and stuff, it could go to an appeal authority or to the board. And so that's not very clear either, but it's one or the other. All right. It talks about the authority of staff, which is just kind of enhanced and clarified. Public hearings and public meetings. There's been questions. Does staff have to have public meetings noticed every time they're going to be doing all this kind of work? And do they have to allow for public comment and input? This is my perspective. It is administrative. Staff is doing the work. Public comment is welcome, but publicly noticing the meeting isn't required, or minutes, because in the end, when the document is approved, all the record will be there. All the showing of the compliance of all the provisions, when the hearings were, when the reviews were, it's all in the record, okay? And that's the way the other attorneys are treating it. Although, in my city, if we have, probably in Centerville, if we have a parks committee that has a city council member on it, then you notice. Or a golf committee that has a city council member, then you notice. This is all staff. And to me, that's the distinction. Okay. Then it defines the single-family residential, two-family residential, and townhome projects. And if you chose to have one public hearing, this would be where you have it. And Lisa and I were discussing that, and she could bring it up. So that's the question, whether or not you really want a public hearing at all. It's not required now. You want a public meeting, but it's not required if you have a public hearing. Then in 1502, that is the concept plan. You're going to keep the concept plan as a tool that you use for other subdivisions, but in this case, no. So that's going to be your pre-application meeting in that second section. And then the preliminary plat, we've got new language in 1503, 060, and 070. And it basically spells out the procedures and also what one has to do, financial guarantees or improvements. The final plat is then spelled out. Now, because a plat has to have the signature of the mayor and the city recorder, we still have to have that piece, right? So I kept that in, that the certification and signatures are by the mayor, but it's ministerial at that point. So then you have the complete application for final subdivision in this particular case. One family, two family, and so forth. And then a lot of detail in section 1504130. And that's basically it. The rest of your code I put in there so you can see how it fits in with the rest of Title 15. There may be some minor changes. There's also some changes that we're going to need in Title 12 that is your zoning code. And those are, where did I put them? But I identified them all by code section. And those could be put into the final draft that goes before the city council. But it's just so that they comport with one another. This is 12 and 15.
Did we get that? Did we get 12?
Do you,
Get 12?
we didn't get 12.
Okay.
No, we just got 15.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. Do you guys have questions for Lisa?
I don't know who my questions are for. I have a boatload of questions. I don't know exactly. They're for a Lisa.
Maybe if I could just go through this questionnaire first and finish the
Good way to put
staff
it.
presentation.
Yeah.
Because again, as we were trying to explain, there's certain things that are mandated and some very little that we have some options on, but we'd like to make sure to highlight for the Planning Commission and the City Council where you. So I filled out this questionnaire to give my initial feedback for the drafting. And then Lisa drafted it, but then I could see, oh, actually, I think we better go back and, make some changes. So, and I did attach this, oh, good, thank you, Whitney. I attached this, I think, today. So the first question was whether to specify a time frame when the application is complete, because it's very important to deem an application complete, because if it's not complete, the timelines don't even start. So we have to be very careful, and I had initially told them, don't worry about it, our code already says, you know, this community development director will deem the application complete. But when I went back to the subdivision ordinance, I think I was thinking of the zoning code. We have very specific provisions in the zoning code for deemed complete. So I just want to pull those and put them in the subdivision ordinance because I was incorrect. So we need to add the completeness check. And we're not going to add a specific time frame, although it has to be done quickly because the completeness check runs concurrently with the 15 business days. But I don't want to, like when you're drafting ordinances, you don't want to put something in there that we might stub our toe on. So by training, we have to have staff know, you know, you better do that completeness check within 5 days because then we only have 10 left. But I didn't want to put it in code. And who's responsible for determining whether it's complete? On all of these, since we only have 2 people in our planning division, we have said it's the community development director, but if you look at that, in the beginning we say, or his or her designee. Okay, so it may seem like the community development director does everything, but a lot of it gets delegated. But we just keep that, and I like that in a small city because someone's in charge, and that's where the buck stops. So I like putting the director, they can delegate, but it's ultimately their thing to monitor. And then, do you want to consider the preliminary approval? So preliminary plat, I did say, yes, let's go to the Planning Commission for preliminary plat. We don't have to, but could you imagine having no subdivision plats come to Planning Commission or City Council? No. I just don't think we're ready for that jump yet, that leap. Even though it's administrative, I like having this checklist, and I like actually staff having to prepare a staff report and explain it, and I think it helps the public. So we did say yes to keeping the Planning Commission at preliminary plat. However, I recommend no public hearing. And again, I think Lisa did a good job trying to explain that, both from the City Council person perspective as well as, you know, the public, is it's very frustrating. We're just looking at a checklist. That's all you can do. You can't ask any other, you can't respond necessarily. So, but as a compromise, so we're recommending no public hearing. You could have one, and we would suggest that's at the preliminary plat before the Planning Commission. But I'm recommending no public hearing, but you allow written comment up to the day of the hearing. Because obviously our staff reports go out Friday, you know, they'll come. So, because I have said, sometimes neighbors know, hey, I think there's an easement, or there's a pipe down there, or there's something that we don't know about. So I do like that, and then staff, you know, it will create some problems if all this written comment is coming the day of the meeting, because you can only have one public hearing, you can't even table it, is the way I read that, right? You can't. So you get one shot.
Could you technically have the applicant waive that?
Waive a public meeting?
Waive the insistence on a single public meeting?
Public hearing.
Sorry.
I would not, because state law says you can only have one. And so, yes, they can agree to something, but then they can come back and challenge us on that because they were held hostage. You know, it's just like, can you ask the applicant to put a fence, even though our code doesn't require it? We love doing that, but we don't do it anymore because we can't. It has to be in our list. We can't ask for things because, again, it just puts pressure on them because they want to get it through. So
I think I'm confused. I need to not be confused on this. When you were talking about you don't want to have a public hearing unless it's right at the beginning, you know, when they're talking about the plat, or people could give letters or their input that way. So why is it that you don't want to have a planning or a public meeting?
So, because subdivision plat approval is an administrative decision. And so there's very little discretion in what the Planning Commission is looking at. Again, it's just a checklist. And so the public comes and they don't necessarily understand administrative legislative decision, and they want to talk about, they don't like the density, or they don't like the lot lines, or they don't like the streets, and none of that is within the Planning Commission's discretion. if the application meets the ordinances, there's nothing you can do. And so it does create a lot of frustration for the public because they come here thinking the planning commission or the elected officials are going to do something, but under the way our Utah law is drafted, you really can't at an administrative
You
level.
raise a good point, though, because that public hearing piece is important for like, to encourage citizen involvement in government, right? So that's the downside of it. The other thing, though, is I think this is also coming from a legislature that is developer heavy. Okay, so a lot of
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Okay? They don't like going to those public hearings and
Right.
being called nasty things.
Right.
They hate it, right? And you can have a room full of people, and this guy's thinking, or man or woman's thinking, I'm just trying to put a project together. I'm not the Antichrist. You know, that's how bad it gets for them, and they're upset about it.
So this is one, this is one decision you could make. Staff / Lisa is recommending no public hearing. I understand that's a jump, but, so the planning commission could say, no, we're going to recommend approval to the city council, but we would like to add in a public hearing at the planning commission.
So let me ask you this. So you said it's an administrative decision, so if somebody comes to, you, Whitney, or whomever they come to first, and they want to put an apartment complex on their property behind single-family homes, and people don't want it, they find out about it, through their neighbors and such.
So hypothetical, can you just say townhomes? Because remember, these new ordinances do not apply to multifamily or commercial.
Okay, so it can't, okay, so.
It won't apply to apartments.
Just
So it
change
won't
your
apply.
So townhomes.
So then townhomes. So then, yes, so then I misspoke. So, let me be very clear then. And all of that neighborhood does not want all of these townhomes right behind them. You can say that they can do that? I mean, you can make that
If it
approval?
meets code, we have to process their application.
Right.
So we have to approve it. If it meets all of our checklists, regardless of what the neighbors think.
Yeah.
It's called public clamor, and you can take it into consideration in legislative decisions, but you cannot in administrative decisions. And that's the dilemma with public hearings on administrative matters.
People think that they can come to a public hearing and say, I don't want that in my backyard.
And it's going to
And
change.
it will
And it's
stop.
gonna change.
But it won't.
But I appreciate their passion.
Yeah.
great.
And
It
that's-
should
and that's
be
what
there.
Lisa's saying.
It
We
needs
like
to
to
be there.
encourage
If we
public
take that
involvement,
away, then.
But it's just,
But Lisa's not saying get rid of public comment altogether.
nope, she's
It's-
modifying it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is for what item particularly, the public hearing we're talking about?
Preliminary.
Preliminary plat.
Preliminary plat.
Yeah.
Like if a builder wants to build on the side of a hill where there's greater than a 30%, slope or whatever, but somehow squeaks in and says, I want to do this, and you guys approve it, but the neighbors below him don't want it, and you're shaking your head, no, what?
There's nothing you can do as a neighbor. If they meet the code and they meet the criteria and it's
So there's really
approved,
no point in having a public hearing to have them come and whine because it met the code.
Doesn't change the outcome,
right.
yeah.
So you have to change the code.
Well, we can't.
You can't.
The state has dictated this is what we do. So
You
hands are
get
kinda
one or none,
There's
is
no-
basically
Having a
what
public
it
hearing
is.
just seems,
mean,
Mean?
yeah.
Well, or unnecessary.
yeah.
I mean, it makes more work for everyone involved. And
it's
it
not gonna
gives the
change the
public an
outcome.
illusion that they have a voice
It's
when
a
they really
false
don't have
sense
a
of
voice.
power on
That's
the-
why I say it's mean. It's mean to the public because they don't really have a voice.
Well, and it becomes doubly frustrating for the public when they come and voice their concerns and then feel like their concerns were ignored.
Yeah.
Totally,
And then they're
yeah,
just
ignored,
going to
yeah.
push their venom on the staff, but it's not staff's problem. It's the
city code.
state's problem. The state gave us this set of problems, we just have to deal with it. Right? They gave us this code, we have to implement it. So I think the public's going to be very confused for a while about this.
And there isn't a public hearing for the final step
Nope.
either.
Nope.
That's really administrative, because city
It's
council is
just-
completely.
And city council's out of
The
it.
director.
And plan.
Development committee, a direct department, and the director is the ultimate voice.
Wow.
So it's a big change. State is mandating final plat is approved by staff. No choice.
It's scary Sorry about this one, I'm just gonna be,
Yeah, yeah.
is if you have a director who can be bribed.
Exactly.
That's one of my things that I have down here. Maybe developers send in a new person to be a new employee, right? And you don't know anything about them, and they don't live here, and they like to line their pockets, and. Then
It could
what?
happen.
Oh, I know.
Has there been any sort of cases that, have contested the state's,
Mandate to do this? Yeah.
their legislative, the Senate bill? Has
But
there
they
been
send in
any
money, so-
constitutional
Yeah, nobody's
challenges?
filed suit to challenge it. And because League of Cities and Town law, we're doing the lobby and so forth, negotiating this language.
Negotiated.
Away from what it was before.
It was terrible before.
So we can't change it as a city, we can't create an ordinance that says that our guy still has to go in front of somebody else.
Well, you can create a test case and pass an ordinance. And then you really would have, a right challenge, but I'm not recommending that.
But my opinion is no. I mean, if the state law is very clear,
Sienna.
as Lisa mentioned in the beginning, we are preempted, which means the city does
We have
not
to
have that
follow
discretion.
it, but yeah, unless we
And
get a
not only
bad guy.
that, folks, you have to follow it, and follow it by February 1.
Yeah. So let me just continue with this checklist. Just remember that's one big item you do have discretion of recommending. The next question on their checklist was, or their questionnaire, do you want to permit concurrent review of preliminary and final plat applications? I said no. We do not allow this for our site plan, conceptual and final. It just gets rushed through. I think with these time clocks, there's no way we're going to run both concurrently.
Not when you're a small city and you have small number of staff. I think that's smart.
So, anyway, I'm glad you agree. Who is responsible for final approval? Again, we put community development director, but that community development director gets input from all of staff, and it's basically, again, just a checklist. Okay, then there was this question about minor subdivisions. Right now, we call it a small subdivision. And is our small subdivision 2 or more?
3.
Or 3, okay. So we're just keeping it the same. 3 or more lots is a minor subdivision, but we're going to call it a minor subdivision rather than a small. And I like this change because right now, our small subdivision is kind of a quirky provision. And it's in our concept plan that says, hey, at concept plan, if you decide you just want to say, you're good, then you skip preliminary and you basically skip final, and staff has to collect everything for final, and it's not even in the code. So my recommendation, I like what they're doing here by saying we're going to call it a minor subdivision, and I would like to spell out that you just jump to final, but you still have to do final. But it's staff. So minor subdivisions are now going to be staff. At least that's the ramification of this. Okay, this is, so this is a big, this new process only applies to single-family duplexes and townhomes. Do you want this to apply to other types of subdivisions like multifamily or commercial? So I initially on the questionnaire said yes, because as staff, we don't want to have this for some, and then this process, and people are going to mix up the noticing, but now that I've read all the edits and seen the complexities, I've just said, and I apologize, late in the game, we're just going to go this new process, this new pilot program with no thinking and random timelines. We're just going to do the basic minimum and apply that to single-family duplexes and townhomes. We're not going to bite off this apple in 3 weeks from now for multifamily and commercial.
I think that's smart. It gives you the option to come back if you find this highly successful. You
Then
could.
we can do it.
And that's what, yes.
Change it.
And that's our goal.
Let's do the ones they are requiring us to do.
Yeah, and Wendy has brought up that the legislature, is going to start here in a few weeks. And so in a couple months, we're actually going to know if they're going to make any amendments. So we would like to wait. We want to do these Band-Aid things, comply with the law, wait till the legislative session ends in March, and then come back to the table and decide what makes sense. So,
I have a question about that. When it says reasonable, do you mean reasonable time frame for the city to decide when they want to incorporate multifamily, or reasonable for the applicant? What is?
Well, so we were just saying, initially I said use the same procedure for both, but don't mandate these unreasonable timelines that they've mandated for I'm going to say residential subdivisions. But now, we don't even have to worry about that because I'm just going to say, follow what we have in our own code and then follow the shot clock for residential subdivisions. Does that make sense? But this complicates it, and we will require a lot of amendments between now and Friday, because now we kind of have to weave this in. Before we were weaving it for everything, but now we've got to spell out, well, this is commercial and multifamily, and oh, but there's an exception for residential. So it's going to make it very awkward, but I think as staff, we're willing to endure that awkwardness for the next 3 months, and then come back with better fixes after we've had time to work with it. And then the final question was, do we want to require additional information beyond these checklists? And I said, yes, if there's any sort of loophole language that we can use, and I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I said yes for the loophole if possible. But I don't know what that lets us do.
Well, it says in the code, you can have additional, so that's it. I'd say, write it down that we might have additional, and this is what we consider to be additional.
Okay. So really, the issues are whether you want the planning commission for preliminary plat, which I think we've said yes, whether you want to have a public hearing at that level, you can decide that. But everything else, I think, is really mandated, despite speaking for an hour on this. But it is important for you to understand, because I think we have to embrace this to the extent we can. Like this is what we're moving forward. I'm trying to see some positives that I do think this is going to help staff. We're going to be a lot more efficient. We're going to have a checklist. We're going to be we're going to treat everyone the same every time, and it's going to be upfront. It's actually going to completely swap the way we do things, because right now we usually meet with the applicant at a development review committee meeting, and we just sort of look at their plans, and we give them feedback, and we've got the engineer and the attorney, and they can ask whatever questions they want. I mean, we can do that at the pre-application phase, but then they have to jump all the way to preliminary, which is where they're going to spend big dollars on engineering with no input. And believe me, we've seen, there's so many changes from concept to preliminary, so they're going to, anyway, they're going to be doing a lot of engineering without very much city input, and I think they're going to go a lot of different rounds. Like we have a provision that says, hey, you can't have a downhill cul-de-sac, and you can't have a cul-de-sac more than 400 feet. Developers always miss that. Now, we're probably going to have to put that in our checklist, but we always get cul-de-sac 600 feet. So they're going to spend all this money on a preliminary plat with and then they have to start over.
Time that Whitney has to spend,
More time.
More time, way more
It's a
time.
lot more time.
Wait, this is gonna be a huge burden to staff.
Oh, yeah.
Huge burden to staff.
Well, and imagine if so we have one city attorney, and we have, basically we're going to have 2 weeks, because we're probably going to have that 15-day time clock will be, 1 week will be taken up by determining completeness. Then that Friday it gets sent out to all of staff. Well, what if you're on vacation for 10 days?
Right.
We only have one attorney, we only have one engineer, so it's going to put a lot of us on,
That's why I
on
guess
the-
that checklist is so important, because what they're basically saying is, well, if it's on the checklist, it's easy. You just compare the plans to the checklist, boom, 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 boom. But anybody who's reviewed plans knows it's not that easy, but they're the developers at the state legislature, so they're all knowing, and boom, 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 it is. So it's a huge burden on staff. But
I hope eventually it does make the process more efficient.
Hopefully,
And
you're being so optimistic. Bless you.
We're happy to invest.
Yeah, because you don't have a choice.
But I think also anecdotally, this is bred by a few cities that have used the process, right? There have been those that have drug their feet, have been difficult, obstreperous, whatever it is, and then these developers get together and say, we got to stop it.
Yeah, Ogden.
So it's not been Centerville.
No, it's not been Centerville.
But
all my rentals are.
that's the reason, is you have a few bad apples.
Yeah.
And you have some really pushy developers, like, I can tell you who they are, but I'm not going to, that spearheaded this. And you had really pushy developers that pushed it. So it is what it is. So do we need to discuss then if the planning commission would like to do the public hearing?
Yes.
You want us to discuss that, right, Lisa?
Yeah, or someone,
Yeah.
you know, you can either discuss it now, or
Yeah.
you know, if someone makes it part of the motion and discuss, but you could discuss it now, because that's a big issue.
It's the big issue, I think. Yeah.
So speaking personally, I prefer the public hearing. There are certainly pros and cons. Not having a public hearing, all of the pros have been identified. The cons are a little more esoteric, but there are pros for having a public hearing as well, and we didn't discuss those. I would say that some of them would be, sometimes venting the public bile is exactly what's necessary. Another reason is that that becomes a flex point, a pivot point, an education point to afford the public an opportunity to understand how the process really does work. And I would say that those outweigh the costs, personally. Personally, I would prefer having a public hearing. Now, then it becomes incumbent on the planning commission, perhaps even the chair, to educate the public when they're there, to say, you all need to understand what we're here for.
You're the new chair. so-
What?
It'll be awesome.
But, so that's just my 10 cents on that one. is
second that.
I would prefer the public hearing. Yes, they come in with wrong expectations, nevertheless.
Because they don't know.
Right, they
Like you
don't
said,
know.
not-
But
not
education
educated.
is key, I
Yeah.
But we
no.
have been able to educate them. I think on some of our other applications, when we tell them, they do come in with that substantial evidence in the real estate, you know, memorandum or something like that, so.
Now, on the other hand, arguing the other side, by having only a public meeting, maybe it will have the knock-on effect of helping the public understand that really the best time to make a decision happened 10 months ago when the legislative decision was made. So freaking get out there
And vote.
and either vote or show up at the meetings when we're making zoning changes.
Yep.
Show up at the meetings when we're making subdivision ordinance changes. But this is why I'm in favor of the public hearing. People are too busy.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And this is a generational change rather than
Yep.
a months-long change that could make a difference in a year. So that's just why I err on the side of the hearing rather than the meeting.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Oh, that's awesome.
I see a lot of nodding heads. I think,
Yeah,
we're in agreement.
as I hear that, I hear the reasoning. I also think it's just setting ourselves up for failure. I mean, it's inviting people in for a public hearing just to tell them, you're wasting your time. Okay, thanks anyway, you know? I don't know that that achieves anything. I feel like it is gonna further frustrate people and put the staff in an even worse position. It's unfortunate that this change is coming on without most people really understanding it or knowing it, right? Because people are used to having their chance to come in and be heard, for good or bad, but there was a change, and I don't know, since there was that change, I just don't know that it's helpful to open up a public hearing that really doesn't have any meaningful outcome.
Now, are you specifically talking about the new law, or are you specifically talking about having a public hearing when somebody puts in an application before I thought that's what we were talking about.
Well,
Am I like way out in left field?
So they're talking about whether or not to hold a public hearing with the new law.
Oh, only with this law?
Yeah.
Right.
Every other application will still have a public hearing if it,
Yep,
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, so just with this.
just what's affected by the new law.
That still covers a good chunk, right? Single families, townhomes.
I mean, it's difficult, because I mean, there's
I
a
know.
case to be
Tough.
made either way. There are reasons to do it and reasons not to do it, but
Can this be sent out to citizens?
it's available right now. Your packet is public information, it's
Yeah,
on
we
the website.
still need to have our public hearing.
We haven't even had our public hearing yet.
Let's have our public hearing.
I'd like to open the public hearing if anyone wants to come forward and let us know how they feel about the state legislature's requirements, so be it. No one would like to speak, so the public hearing is closed.
Lisa, you were proposing kind of a hybrid approach, where they could submit written comments up to the day of the
Yes, if you don't have the public hearing, that would be one way to let the public
That's your
speak.
alternative.
kind of like that.
Because we do hear from them, and I like having a framework to hear from them. If-
Would that be something just through the website? That's how they would submit a written?
Yeah, they could.
We could create a
we
form
often-
online, or we could just do email.
We have a lot of platforms. They can email, they can, but we like the comments going to staff so we can then present them to the planning commission.
Because
rather
at
than-
any of these meetings, you're gonna, if there are folks that come or there's comments, people watching, you're probably gonna wanna have some sort of preface to say, hey, this is the law. The law doesn't require a public hearing, and therefore, you may have to have some sort of explanation, chair, vice chair. And then, moving forward, they'll know that's the law.
Well, I think neighbors will still show up, to be honest, even.
And they might, but if you have a hybrid approach, at least it gives them some way to vent and, give comment and we
But to
can.
what end? I mean, again, it just makes more work for them.
It's true.
Well, I think you're changing one work for another work. If you do the written, we can handle those, we can put those in the staff report. If you do the public hearing, we know it's the public hearing. So I think you're just
Okay.
changing it
Or you
up.
do neither, right?
Or you do neither, yeah.
Oh,
You don't have to have public comment at all.
I kind of like public comment.
Okay, so maybe, you can still make a motion and debate that motion, perhaps even the public hearing part with an amendment to the motion. But what we're recommending is that the planning commission recommend approval, ordinance amendments to the city council, subject to or directing staff to make the changes that we've discussed regarding, we can either list those or just say the changes we've discussed or any deemed necessary by staff and the attorneys. Because as we've mentioned, we need to fix a few things in the next 2 days or by next Tuesday, like the appeal procedures and then weaving this now that I'd like to leave everything as is except for residential subdivisions.
I did notice it mentions Riverdale City,
Yes, it does.
so you'll just quality control that, I'm sure.
On page 32.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, well, that's one of my clients.
Yep.
So, and I figured you're probably a thing, right? You're just plugging in a lot of different cities. But there are several things in there that, are we adopting this? Are we approving how it is written?
Well, Lisa just mentioned there are still some modifications they have to work out.
And then we'll
Well,
approve that.
modifications, but for this other Lisa, Lisa number 2, there are things in there like, some things that there are errors in it.
Oh, yes.
So,
There's a technical, non-substantive, those can change for sure.
right, technical, non-substantive, spelling, capitalization of, right? So all of those things. So
Oh, yeah.
we're not approving this to
Verbatim what
be
you see.
what we see. We're just approving because we're forced.
Yep.
And this is what it is, kind of, today.
And wait, like we're saying, we would like to have it really look sharp by
Yeah.
Friday.
Okay, it'll be so
Just
amazing.
another
Yeah,
question
so
for
if
maybe-
you want to send those in writing to me, you could,
I
to
will.
make sure we get all those.
Yeah.
That'd be
I
great.
like her. She's like, I will.
I will.
Oh, I will.
Just another question on the hearing part. Do we know, like, from any other cities, how, what has the
How are they
the
making it?
reactions to either doing the hearing or not? Can you speak to that?
They're about all in the same position as you are. You know what I mean?
Not
Like,
very
we
far
got
in the
all
process.
Submissions this week.
Yeah.
It's kind of in that process. Some of the cities that I've got Brigham City and Riverdale and Kearns. So they all have different ideas about it. And it kind of is unique to where they live. I think when it comes to the smaller communities, when I represent them, they'll want public hearing. And the reason why is that they have land that's open and available. the changes here will literally impact their communities. Where most of these cities along the Wasatch Front are built out, right? So I think it kind of depends on the city and the audience on whether or not they're going to have public hearings. But the point that you made, I felt the same way when I heard it at the Utah Municipal Attorneys Association conference. They said, we're going to delay public hearings, before session. And so it's a huge policy shift. And as you say, it is generational. So.
Yes, big time.
And we can do it either way. I'm sure the city council will also have significant debate and
Yeah,
discussion
because
on
we're just forwarding a recommendation.
Correct.
And I would wager that they'll probably stick with a public hearing. But that's just me reading the tea leaves.
Well, if we're gonna come back with amendments in a couple months anyways, and you don't like what we're doing,
Yeah.
you could change it.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Heidi cannot, but she could come.
You can come
You
to
can
the
be part
public
of the
hearing.
public.
You can come. You can come. We want you to come.
Just know that your voices will not be
want a
heard.
special invite.
Well, okay, so we actually have 2 items left on our agenda. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the municipal code amendments as presented to us.
I'll second.
So you recommend approval
Yep.
to the city council, subject to staff making
Yep.
the changes we discussed tonight
Yep.
and deemed necessary by city staff and the attorneys.
Yes, please,
That sounds great.
Thanks, Lisa.
Stated.
as stated. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so that's my motion, and Matt's seconded it. Sean? You want to vote?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Did we have a second?
Yeah, Matt seconded
Matt
it.
seconded it.
Okay, and what, did that address the public hearing or?
No, it
Left, okay.
We're just leaving it like you proposed it.
As of right now, there's no public hearing, right?
Right,
Right.
for residential.
Yeah.
Is I'm fine with that motion so long as the city council just be made aware of our discussion points, the pros and the cons. But I assume that's going to happen anyways. So I'm comfortable with the motion as stated.
Cool. Okay, we'll keep voting. We interrupted in the middle for a cool.
I said aye, you said aye.
I didn't say aye, but I'll say aye.
Oh, I said aye.
Aye.
All right, okay, so everybody voted in a very haphazard manner.
Okay.
Firing me today.
We are not firing you.
So good. Okay, so the next item on our agenda.
Thank you.
Is,
Thank you, Lisa.
yeah,
Go get some rest and we'll talk tomorrow.
is impact fees.
Yes.
Is what? I'm sorry.
Impact fees,
Oh, yes.
and the impact fee ordinance. So Lisa.
Thank you. Before all the state law changes on subdivision process, we have been working to rewrite our subdivision ordinance for years. And then we thought, oh, well, now they're coming up with all these changes, we better wait, and so we put it on the back burner. But anyway, it is our goal, because we have a very good draft of a reorganized subdivision ordinance that we would like to bring forward eventually. But we're going to kind of wait, because we've got our hands full with just addressing the state law. But part of that rewrite of our subdivision ordinance is addressing impact fees. So our impact fees, we have a chapter in our subdivision ordinance regarding impact fees. But we don't use that chapter. That's been around for decades because we have 3 impact fees: our culinary water impact fee, storm drain impact fee, and our parks impact fee. So we only have 3 here in Centerville. And we've adopted those by standalone ordinance. So in like 2013, 2016, 2018, so we just adopt one ordinance for this, and then we do the study, and we adopted another one, and we never codified it. And when I say codified, I mean we never put that ordinance into our municipal code. So when somebody wants to know about our impact fees, we have to go find that ordinance and hand it to them. Second of all, since we have 3 different standalone ordinances, they each have a little bit different appeal procedures. were a little bit different, because depending on what the law was when they were enacted, you know, there's all these administrative things, and the state's been tinkering with, you know, our impact fee statutes over the last decade. So my goal and desire is to take all of those administrative portions of our impact fees and put them in our code, but leave the study, the impact fee facility plan, and all of that technical stuff that actually supports the fee, I just refer to them by reference, because you have to do a lot of studies and modeling to support your impact fee. So I really don't want to impact that, but I want to make sure that all appeal procedures and, you know, challenges and modifications are the same for whatever impact fee you're paying. That's why I'm proposing, and then I want to put it in its own standalone title, because impact fees are slightly different. Like the code says we have to follow state law as if it was a land use ordinance or maybe a general plan in terms of noticing, but the planning commission, then it says, but the planning commission doesn't, we're not saying the planning commission has any say on impact fee regulations. So, but since it's in our subdivision ordinance, we would have to bring it to you. So that's why I want to take it out of our subdivision ordinance and just address it on its own, so that amendments might be slightly easier for staff. So that's my proposal, and I'm happy to, you know, talk about some of these provisions, but basically what I did was I took the most recent, well, the most recent was our parks, 2018, and that was just a rewrite. So I think I took our culinary water, because it was the most recent provisions. I used that as a template for these provisions. And then I looked at the other provisions, and then I looked at state law. And kind of, so it's not exactly like any one, it's just a new, completely new chapter.
Cool.
Now, these new people, see, I get really excited about codes and having them organized and things, so anyway.
Cool, okay.
It's good someone does, right?
Do you guys have any questions for her before I open the public hearing? Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing if anyone wishes to come and speak regarding the impact fee ordinance updates. Now would be your opportunity. There is no one, so I will close the public hearing. Do you guys want to discuss this? Feels very straightforward. It feels just very sort of administrative to me. Just tidying things up and dotting all your i's and crossing your t's. So I think Lisa's done a good job.
Yep.
Yes,
No
agreed.
comment from me.
Yeah, I worked on, it took me all year, and I wanted to finish it by the end of the year, and then it just got
Took me all.
too busy, so anyway,
It's a lot of
2024.
work.
Yep. No problem with any of those.
Do we need to make a motion then? Does anyone?
Yeah, so we're just recommending approval to the city council, and we'll take it up to them along with the subdivision ordinance amendments.
On all three at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to forward a positive recommendation to the city council with no conditions, caveats, concerns, reservations, questions, criticisms, or otherwise.
Or maybe no spelling errors either.
Really?
I didn't find any at a glance, I'm just saying. But if I do,
I will second that motion.
I'll third it.
So any final words before we vote? Okay, Sean, we'll start with you again.
Aye.
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 Great, that passes very
Thank you.
cleanly.
Well done.
You're gonna have such a clean planning commission with Mason in charge. Things are just gonna be so well said and just, how's it going? Okay, so the next thing is we need to approve our minutes. There were just 2 pages of minutes, so hopefully you looked at them. It was from our November 8th meeting. Did anybody have any comments, changes they felt needed to be made? I didn't.
No, I didn't.
So I would just make a motion that we approve the minutes as prepared and presented to us for our November 8th meeting.
Second.
We have a second. Okay, we can vote this one together. Everybody? Aye.
Aye.
Cool. So does anybody have any final comments? I have one final comment. As you're planning.
Do you mind if I go before you?
Yes, go.
I'm just gonna, for all of you that don't know, Corey has retired.
Yes.
So I will be interim in the meantime, but we are looking for someone, so if you know anyone
Round two.
qualified.
Round 2, I heard.
Round 2, so if you know
Yeah.
anyone, tell them about it. They can apply online.
Heidi, do you want to apply?
There you go.
I do not.
Join us.
There's an open door, I'm just saying.
You know.
Another way back into the commission.
Right over here.
And if I may,
Yes.
as the putative chair, well, not putative anymore, I suppose. I'm sure that I am expressing everybody's sincere and deep gratitude for all of the effort you put in. You were by far my favorite.
Oh, well, that's
The
fair.
chairs I've worked with, seriously.
Thank you.
And I'll put that on the public record. You always kept it interesting, but then just led us extremely well, so thank you.
I second that.
Well, great.
Yeah,
I'm
and-
glad it wasn't a flop.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thought I only got you for a couple months.
And you taught us a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You accepted the role even though you didn't want to.
I really didn't.
And you filled it well.
It
So
was yeah.
that says a lot. That's great integrity, yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to, but I did. So I saw it as an opportunity and I took it. So here we go. Okay, so here's my last final comments. I don't know if you guys are into watching things on Netflix, but there's a Netflix show, and I don't know what it's called, but I call it the Blue Zones. Has anyone heard of the Blue Zones?
I watched it 2 nights ago.
Yeah,
Several of the episodes.
I want to live to be 100. So, as you look forward in life and what you can do as you, because Centerville City's just, I don't know if they've finished yet, but they're rebranding. And it's going to be a whole new place and a whole new city, and we're getting a new city planner. There are things you can do at the city level, at the community level, that encourage this gentleman has labeled as blue zones, which are areas that promote health and welfare. So, we could have walkable trails, and we could have access to open space, and we could have,
Community events was one of them.
community events and the availability of good food. Anyway, so if you're looking, Mason, as you move forward with the planning commission, Becky was always like, what's our goals? What's our goals? And we didn't really set goals this year because, we were winging it. But you could look toward the blue zones for goals if you need some of how to make this place great. So that's it.
Well, it goes with our city mission that I was looking at a couple times tonight, right? To serve the people and promote their peace, health, safety, and welfare while planning for the future.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
We need more trails. We need more outdoor things. We need people to be out in the community. I agree, so
Yep.
thank you for sharing that.
Sure. So, does anyone want to make a motion to close the meeting? All right, Lorraine's made a motion.
Make a motion to close this meeting.
Matt has seconded. Okay, we can vote together. Everybody want to close the meeting? Say aye. Aye. Yes, the meeting's over.
9:02.